What's going on, everybody? It is time for the debut episode of OverBOTCH, an amateur Overwatch League analysis podcast from three chicanerous young gents from all over the world. We are spanning borders, we are spanning time zones multiple times over. Welcome to our debut episode, breaking down, having fun with everything going on in professional and competitive Overwatch, as well as just what's going on in the scene as well. The love of this game, love, as frustrating as that relationship might be at times, is what brought us all together. It's played a huge part in my content. It's played a big part, I know, in my other co-hosts' careers and lives and everything as well. So this is something fun for us to just kind of espouse that and share that with you, the community. So without further ado, though, no debut episode would be complete without introducing everybody who's a part of it. So without that, you guys know me. You're tired of hearing my candy ass talk all the time. So I'm going to give this chance for a few minutes for each of my co-hosts to introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Great Root Bear Richard. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what's brought you to this scene.
Hey, what's going on, guys? You may know me from my days in New York, where I started up 5 Deadly Venoms. The first supporters crew in the Overwatch League was a party of one once upon a time at Waypoint Cafe, but we went on to do pretty amazing and continue to do pretty amazing and awesome things. Also hang out back up here when I moved back north of the border. Started another supporters club. You may know them, Toronto Alpha Flight, because I love old Marvel comics from the 80s. But yeah, just, never been great at the game, play a lot of brig hours. And that's probably the end of what you want to hear about me. Once I said that, it's like 350 hours by choice, and I'm very proud of it. In quick play, because I never do comp.
AKA you retain your sanity.
Pretty much. But on to you, Plex.
And yeah, Plex, same thing to you. What little bit about you and what's kind of brought you to the Overwatch scene?
Okay, well, I'm going to try and follow Richard there. No pressure on me. So yeah, Plex back at your service. Call me Plex for short. I joined the scene shortly after the Overwatch League began in 2018. And I became a fan of the Florida Mayhem Overwatch League team, which, if you can tell by my accent, that doesn't make sense because...
Wait, you're not from Boca Raton?
No way.
That's a Tampa accent right there.
Yeah, that is hard. That's South Tampa. I live
Jacksonville.
there, trust me.
But no, I've always believed in supporting teams that don't necessarily get the attention. It's like anyone could support a big team. I always like to support the smaller teams. That's how I joined Florida Mayhem and eventually became a Discord moderator for their community and helped run their events, game nights, things like that. So I'm involved in the scene in a very different way, but I'm involved.
No, but that's kind of the impetus for this show. And, for anybody who kind of wanted to hear a brief backstory on how and why this came together, it was just one, you guys hear me talk about it all the time on stream. I'm a big fan of the league. There's very few games at a competitive level that I give a crap about. Like just because it's like I'm old and I'm not very good. But this game, actually, thanks to Plex, he was the one who introduced me to it. Because Plex he's a moderator on my stream. He's been there pretty much since the very, very beginning. I remember I still have a clip of you commenting on my PS4 direct Twitch stream when I was playing Goose Game.
That's it, yeah.
And so yeah, as I kind of got more and more like online competitive things, Plex said like, hey, like I do a lot of stuff with this Overwatch. Have you ever played it? I'm like, I knew people like Austin Creed had when Overwatch first came out, I remember was all about it and doing stuff with it with up, down, down and everything. So I'm like, oh sure, I'll give it a try. And it was cool. It was interesting. And I kind of immediately fell in love with the game. So it's funny that I came into it during a time when everyone talks about how this big drought of content, right? The last couple of years with the development of Overwatch 2 and things kind of lacking in the update department. And so it was weird me coming into a community that was very understandably just like chomping at the bit and a little frustrated. And here I'm like this bright-eyed, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. These animated shorts are so cool. Oh, these abilities are so cool and everything like that. And like, it's like magic and fantasy and futuristic, kind of like Final Fantasy-esque, right? It's like futuristic, but people are swinging swords and hammers. So it's kind of anyway, I fell in love with it. So I'm like, I wanted to get a group of people together who just chat, wax philosophic, wax stupid, wax smart about something we all kind of care about. And I also like having people from different viewpoints. So like there's me, new, like I said, bright-eyed, bush-tailed kind of fanboy, discovering things all about the league and everything like that, learning more and more every day. Richard, like you actually have a little bit more kind of like nails into the thing, like you've been into the scene, actually done some work, I know, with some tier 2 orgs and stuff like that. And then Plex, same thing, kind of been here OG since the beginning of like Overwatch and the league and stuff like that. And then also have that little bit of that relationship moderating for a professional team. So it's like there's people from all three of us bring a spectrum of both opinion, analysis, excitement, blah 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 blah. So that was kind of the impetus for all of this.
And we were totally your first choices for this, weren't we?
Absolutely.
You were. No, absolutely. I love to poke fun. If you didn't see the little teaser trailer, it's out. It's on my Twitter. It's on my Instagram. You can go ahead and check that out. But thank you again for everybody for joining us on the live show. If you ever want to watch this be recorded live, you might be hearing this on different podcast platforms or YouTube. But if you ever want to be a part of the live experience, maybe get your, name, your comment, your question up on air, you can join us at twitch.tv/DramaKingMatt. We are going to be hopefully recording every Tuesday at noon Central Time, 1 Eastern Time, which
time zones.
Almost
gonna
totally
get this right
today.
one day.
Yeah, which I was just telling Plex before we got on. I one time was invited for a virtual panel, and I came on, and everybody was chatting. I'm like, oh, this is like the pre-show chat, cool. And then they're like, oh, you're here. I was like, yeah. When did we start? They're like, we're wrapping up. I'm like, oh, Eastern Time Zone. Gotcha. My bad. So yeah, don't worry, folks. We'll get it right. We'll get it right most part. But so before we break down this coming weekend is the opening weekend for the season 5 of the Overwatch League. The first season played on Overwatch 2. So before we start breaking down teams, before we start breaking down players, predictions, goofy bets, which some I've talked about with my co-host beforehand, some I have not, and I will be surprising them with. Oh yeah. Let's briefly talk about Overwatch 2.
What's
the
Overwatch
beta?
2?
What is Overwatch 2, you ask? It's a weird attempt by Blizzard to redefine a sequel, which just basically means a big overhaul of the original game. So full disclosure, so I got into the PC beta. It's only on PC, unfortunately, right now. Richard did as well. Plex, playing on console, unfortunately did not, but we'll get some impressions, at least from watching people who've played, because it's been out for about a week now.
Well, so, I'm actually really curious about Plex's take, because I think those who are watching more and watching more of the structured games, I think that's going to be the most useful opinion of all.
That's
beyond
a fair point.
Us as players.
That's
Matt, I got to know what you think, because you know my opinions, and they're pretty.
I do, but
I mean,
the people
I'm only here because Gundam
Evolution's
not released. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm 91% gun tank. That's what they told me.
Okay.
But really, I want start us off, because you are more optimistic, I think, than I am. A little bit less pessimist, or
sure.
Really, I've got some issues, but
okay.
Let us have it.
We will go. So I will say this. One, yes, my first impressions a week in, I have a lot of fun. I think that I do personally think 5v5, as scary as it was, I do think it allows for more brawly fights, and the fights are faster. This is what I've always described it as since I started playing a week ago. It was like, it's faster, which is wild, because Overwatch is one of the fastest first-person shooters out there. It's less tactical and more spam kind of stuff, right? It's so fast. But so it's a little faster with one less person on the team, but it's also a little less chaotic because there's less clutter on the screen. There's less giant shields covering half the point and everything like that. And the way they've worked everything, and the new maps, I think, are pretty well designed. There's a ton of natural cover, which you will need more of now because there are less shields. So all this to say, I've had a lot more fights where like you brawling. It doesn't seem like anybody's going down. Even as a tank, then you go down, and I'm able to get back, even with a slow ass tank, back into the fight because people are able to kind of keep brawling it out, which can be frustrating. But at the same time, I like the idea that like the minute your tank goes down, all right, it's a team wipe, and it's 6v5, and it's a team wipe now because 2 tanks just walk over you. So I do like the little bit more elongated fights. It is much more a kind of attack DPS heavy. I do think there are a lot of little things, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we start talking about each other's kind of critiques and thoughts. It is a beta. There is a part of it I know, and I am trying to be very positive. But after all this time, I do wish in this first beta there was a little bit more given to us. I know, but after 3 years of development, I was hoping for maybe like 2 heroes, maybe a 4th map. But I am patient enough. I'm sure we will get there. Those are my initial things. I'm sure as you guys talk, I'll think of some other things. So, Richard, what about you? Let's hear it. Let her rip. You're muted.
Well, then, the shift to 5v5, I feel it feels brawly, right? It's very, very much like I joked with someone when I first got it. I'm like, oh, I got it. It's shooting goats. That's what it's going to feel like. It's going to be shooting goats. But it's tight in that sense, right? Because you do have to collapse a lot, which I do like. The aim boxes, the hit boxes are tighter. One thing I noticed, like little weird things have come up so that like with Moira, you actually have to aim a little bit now. Like you won't just lock in when you're within a general vicinity. You actually do have to kind of aim to get that hit. So I noticed that in the game style. So that's going to be a big change. I think Winston's going to be mega. People are all talking about like because of the way the tanks have adjusted. Everyone's like, oh, Arissa's going to be unstoppable, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, actually, I think Winston's going to be a really big thing. Excuse me, in the game. So good for Winston players. Good for Boger over in Bulgaria. So he'll be very happy with this. But getting into the specifics, like the nuances. So in terms, here's the thing. 1, what the hell is going on with the audio and the sound design and the engineering? It's awful. It is quite possibly the worst made set of sounds and application and mixdown that I've ever gone through ever in a game. Now, and I'm look, I'm not just saying this out of like I spent time in audio engineering, sound design, and synthesis, and I got a couple issues with it because the leveling is so weird in the beta right now. So all of a sudden, like things get kind of cluttered. There's way too much bass. Way too much bass in the mix. Everything's like woof, woof. Every sound, every effect. Like when you get shot with an on a dart, why does it go boom? Why does it do that? It's like you're getting hit in the head with like it's like everything sounds like you're punching a watermelon. So that's a huge issue. Also, like guys, people like when you do layers, I'm like it's like doing like a jungle snare. It's like they have the snare and then the hi-hat attached to the snare, and then you have a second snare, but it's like they didn't like the way it's set up. Like best example, Zenyatta. What the hell is going on? Like every time he claps, it's like it's a clap and a jingle, like a tambourine jingle, and like some like bells going off all at the same time. And then when he shoots, it's like you shoot and it's like thunk, and there's a ding and there's a woof. I'm like, you don't need so much. and the thing is, when you shelve the EQ, you got to actually mix things out. But here's why it's a problem. So a lot of us we're all playing on headsets, and ear fatigue and audio fatigue is a serious thing. Like, I'm the guy, I have to wear earplugs when I go to concerts and all that stuff. I have to. But the way the game is, there's so much sound going on. It's actually just like, it's an unpleasant experience. And then when you add on to that, the fact that Overwatch already had too many visual effects, of which they've added more. There's more, like everything has tracers and flares and like sort of nebulous kind of images. I'm like, so all you're getting is like this, like it's a cacophony of visual, like just noise and audio smashing. And it's I actually find the game very unpleasant to play in that sense from a functional perspective. Maps are like mega wide, so it's kind of cool. So placement's really different, right? So there's tons of flanking, tons of space. There's always some Zenyatta. right, or McCree, who took like the 15-minute walk around the map to get to you. But here's the problem.
Yes.
Because the maps themselves were built off of fundamentally different gaming calculus. Some were built for 5v5, some were built for 6v6.
Yeah.
So the laneways are not designed to be conducive to play across the map styles for between the old and the new. So what you end up getting is, like, my favorite example is compare Junkertown to the Monte Carlo map. Like, there's like basically maps have like require corner play, angles, cover. Like, you have to duck into small areas. There's like small rooms now on the side of the map you can get into, and it's the supports go in there so you can regen. That's where you go to pause, and then you come back out. You know, there's pause points. There's natural pause points, whereas other maps don't. And the whole issue is you can't have maps that were built for different games necessarily and then adapt them. It would be like, it's like a high school. I joke they basically got the equivalent of a multi-purpose high school field where it's like it's soccer and football and cricket and baseball, but like for one of those sports, you know it's gonna suck.
Yeah.
You know, so my greatest example is it's like when you play soccer in your NYCFC at Yankee Stadium. It sucks. You're like kind of diagonal to the entire stadium and you're smaller than normal. It's just not great.
They do this similar. The Bears will play, I think, once a year or something like that at Wrigley Field. And it's like it's interesting. It's like, oh, it's this event, but it makes zero like sense. Like it's a terrible fit for the game. Like if you were ever to do it long term.
Yep.
Yeah.
But there's some things I love about the game. You can pull a stall out. You can save a point like there's no tomorrow. Like there are epic comebacks, and I really do like that. The momentum is there, and it's unforgiving. The game is unforgiving as hell on supports. Which actually gets to, I think, my personal biggest underlying challenge with it. And it's that Overwatch has historically been predicated on the philosophy of a pick up and play approach to a game. You didn't have to actually have a ton of experience in FPS. You can get in, etc. Now, of course, everyone coming from OW1 to OW2 has gone through X number of years of development. But the challenge is, a lot of folks came in and they started on support. It was one of the few games where you could start off as a support and actually kind of survive. Like they're like, just heal and do this. You can't do that anymore in the game. If you come in as somebody inexperienced in an FPS and you go support, you will uninstall and delete that game. Like, it's effing horrible if you don't know what you're doing. And the advent of the leaderboard just leads to people being incredibly like conducive to like ripping people apart because like, what the F are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, guys, like, it's a beta, it's busted, but that's actually an issue because Overwatch's baseline skill cap was lower. Its peak was just as high, if not higher than anything else. But the baseline's lower. You can't even come in as a Moira and like kind of approximately spray and approximately heal. The spray doesn't land in the same way. So what's going to happen is it's going to change the nature of the game. It's designed now to be a little bit more like properly competitive, but it cuts out a lot of the entry point for new people. It is not a good game to introduce people to right now. It's like, it's really aggressive.
I didn't think about that.
Right?
Yeah. The floor, the skill
floor is higher. It is higher now.
Yeah.
And then lastly, like, and then, you know, it's just interesting because it's like, I've got some thoughts on like where this meta will go as a result. But like I said, in the end, I think it's a game where, again, like I said, I had a lot of Wrecking Ball's banned in week 1 of the league. They're bans. How can they have bans? There's not enough.
No, hold up.
Why?
Yeah, this is not a league ban, hero ban thing. This just came up. There's a bug in the beta right now where Wrecking Ball was causing people to be booted from the server or crash the game.
So he really was a Wrecking Ball.
They're literally, yeah.
I will destroy your server access. No,
Yeah.
So no, but in the end, so what it is I said, this is not Overwatch. This is a new game that's using Overwatch IP. You play it differently. Your tactics are different. The skills you have to have are different. You cannot play the heroes the way you used to play them. Generally speaking, you cannot, right? Because DPS are all faster now too. Like, why? I was like, why is Pharah so fast? And the problem is everyone's gone faster. And what's been interesting is that, okay, with that, when you're flying and then you use her concussion missile to move, it's like she's really fast. Like, it's a little bit weird. But again, all okay. But as a result, though, the game is very, very different. And again, this is just my outsider view looking in. The beta is very disjointed. Like, the sound mix isn't done. The sounds themselves, some of them individually are interesting, but I think they're interesting because the same way that like sub bass is interesting when you get it at an IMAX theater, but then after 3 hours of film, all you hear is this the room, like the shaking of the room.
Yeah.
Ear fatigue is going to be a problem. They've got to figure this piece out. The flanks are so wide, you can't use the audio to figure out where people are, because typically the audio cue was they're coming in for the kill, but the flanks, since the damage output's gone up, and you're like the Zenyatta, you get one-shotted, and then that's the last thing.
Yeah, I agree.
The power balancing is really weird because some people, they have the one-shot. Doomfist can't one-shot. Everyone's like, yeah, Doomfist can't one-shot. Okay, but then why does Roadhog have an easier one-shot? Why are the DPS like the Genji with 3 shuriken will one-shot you to the head now?
Genji feels very powerful.
So my point is, I'm like, the game actually, if I could be so bold, I think it's completely busted, and it scares the crap out of me that we're going to watch this for like 30 days and it's all going to get patched. And if we thought power creeps were weird before, it's going to get worse, because I think some of the continuity of the development was lost as the studio changed, because a lot of people came and a lot of people left and a lot of things happened. And it's like, they're on these individual missions to make things cool. And it reminds me of when I worked on the launch of the Samsung Galaxy S3. So I'll leave with this because I've been going on for a while. There was a whole ad campaign that Samsung had, and it was how they made the sound of the notifications. And if you had an old Samsung, the GS3, you'll remember there was a sound that kind of was like this. Like that. It was like, that was the Samsung sound. And they had a whole video saying, we worked with audio engineers to come up with this sound, and it is the sound of one drop of orange juice falling into a glass in an empty room. No, it's real.
For real?
And I'm like, guys, no one cares. And it doesn't matter. And I feel like there's a lot of exhibition in the design, a lot of exhibition, showing things off. Look what we can do. We got visuals and we got sound, and you can do these things. And it's lacking a cohesion. But again, it's a beta, so that's fine. But it's like, how does this look when it goes into a league play? Because what's going to happen is there's going to be patches and changes. So the first like 30, 45 days, it's like we're going to have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
It'll be like the first run of the original beta when people were like making the leagues, and it's like, Bastion has a shield. I didn't know that because I wasn't playing, but like it'll be like all over the place.
Yep.
But I have a feeling we're going to see an equivalent change of like a Bastion no longer has a shield. I just don't know what that change is.
And we'll get into that. Plex, we'll get your initial thoughts in a second. But that's what I'm very curious about. Is it's this season of the league, and again we'll get into more of this later. I think is going to be one of the most chaotic, disjointed, potential. Like as this thing, like you said, keeps getting patched. And like I think it will get to a good place, but it is in a very disjointed up.
Winston,
down.
though, man, I'm telling you, like Winston's going to be the tank.
That's not the only. I was the one even telling you. I'm like, hey, Winston feels tickle fingers, and his shot is weak. But I've heard multiple Winston players.
It's going to be Winston, man.
You're sleeping on him. He's very, very useful. And I
just don't know how to use Winston.
Yes, exactly.
Chaos is coming. Chaos incoming. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Jafar James. Oh yeah.
So Plex, yeah, you have not had a chance to play it, but from watching it, watching pro players and watching the streams and stuff that you've seen, what is your kind of outside looking in of just how it looks from a viewer standpoint and things you are either looking forward to or not looking forward to?
Well, initially, I'm just thinking to myself, it's got a really good tempo. That is something that sort of jumped out at me immediately. Anybody who's watched the 2018 Overwatch League, remember the original dive messer. Winston D.Va, Zen Mercy, Tracer, plus one other damage. It could be Pharah, Soldier, Genji, or anything like that. The amount of team fights you could get in that messer was crazy. It's like, there are times I'd be watching a Dorado game, and you'd have like 2 or 3 team fights in point A, 2 or 3 team fights in point B, and so on and so forth. I feel like it's getting to that point again, which, as a viewer, I'm all for.
Yeah, more action, more fights.
Yeah. So, because in 2019, when we had the Goats meta, it was basically make one mistake you're all dead.
Yeah, you're done. Yeah, that, like I was saying, like sometimes it doesn't seem like a huge thing, but it would happen all the time. And even as recently as like last season, in a 6v6, if it goes to 5v6, sometimes it goes whoom, especially depending on if it was a key support or like a key tank. It was just team wipe.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's actually going to be healthy from a viewer's perspective, in the sense of you've got a good tempo, so things are happening. Whereas we've seen recent messes like Double Shield, Orisa Hog. You've seen team fights just go on for such a long time. You think to yourself, get on with it! Just kill someone already!
Do something! Somebody throw a pie!
Yeah, I mean, God, the number of times where during the GOATS meta as a viewer, I was thinking to myself, just do something for the love of God. I mean, because they'd start on Ilios Ruins, for example. Then it's a case of they're at the gates. They meet in the middle, and then they start dancing around. I'm like, okay, anything gonna happen? Okay, we're 30 seconds in, the point's about to unlock. No, still nothing. Oh, we're a minute in, and finally got a kill. That was basically the GOATS meta. I mean, I've always believed that Overwatch players need to take more risks. It's like, not in terms of competitions or anything like that. I'm talking like take more chance. Like, I'm going to go for this risky attack to try and catch someone out. Now, you don't really see that nowadays. And I think Overwatch 2 could potentially bring that to the mix, because you've got a lot of teams trying to figure out what's going on. So the first team to take advantage of that confusion in a team fight will gain the advantage. And you've got teams that are really good at set plays. It's like, that's something historically the LA Gladiators have been good at. Great bamboozle, everybody. It's that kind of thing where I think teams that can utilize set plays might have the advantage this year because of the confusion of people trying to figure out everything with the game and such. So it's going to be like an arms race, in my opinion, for that one.
Oh yeah, I mean it's going to be a huge race to figure out the metas. What that's something, and those are going to change as things get balanced, patch, buff, nerf, all that stuff too, which could be happening. I mean, look at we just talked about it. We just referenced it earlier. It's a balls wrecking ball was causing an issue in the game because it's still in a beta state, so they had to pull them out of play. Now, for all your wrecking ball mains in the league, who knows? What if that happens with Reinhardt? What if that happens with Soldier, who's felt very powerful in the beta and stuff like that? I'm very curious to see how that plays out in league play and everything, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of my main thing. I mean, like the tempo, the strategy, things like that. It looks a lot like 2018 Overwatch, and that is something I adore.
That's awesome. I wasn't even around then, so that's pretty cool to hear.
I'd say, because the 2018 Overwatch, I'll say, to Matt, it was this sort of high risk, high tempo, we're going to get your face style. And you would see all these custom strategies for different maps. We saw a little bit of that in 2021 last year.
Yeah,
where teams were saying, okay, we're going to play this comp on King's Row, but we'll play a completely different comp on Numbani, for example. Because obviously the different map structures and architecture. And I would love for a return to that sort of competitive Overwatch where each map has its own specific strategy. Like you had the pirate ship on Junkertown, the infamous comp from back then. That was always a lot of fun.
Yeah. And we in the individual, you talk about like the high risk plays and so I do think that's kind of why I'm excited for the league, though, because as chaotic as it'll be, it will be disjointed as things get changed, added, pulled, this and that. It will be a little chaotic, but on it from an out, like I don't envy everybody at the league. Like, sorry, Mr. Huck, sorry, Mr. Miller, like having to deal with all that and like, oh my God, now we can't do this, we can't. But as a stand back and kind of watch viewer, I'm ready to watch a little bit of chaos and like watching people. If you have much more individual impact in 5v5, from wild flanking DPS plays or or tanks or something like that. Just some crazy. What the hell are they doing? On all these new maps too.
Oh yeah.
Like you referred to it, Richard, like the new ones have so much like indoor, like underneath tunnels, so many flanking little loop-de-loop spots that I'm like, I'm just still discovering.
Well, the Toronto map, I'm like, why is there always someone like all the way here or all the way there? And why are they killing me in the back of my head?
The push maps in particular are so, and maybe because I'm so used to both, I mean, control and escort maps are very linear, either in an escort or it's fight to the center.
Yep.
Which it is like push is you fight to the robot, but there's so many like loop-de-loop ways around. Like you get flanked so many ways. Like there's two, usually in Overwatch 1 maps, correct me if I'm wrong, unless I'm missing them. From either spawn, there's pretty much one way, main way, right?
Yeah.
To the point, either whether you're defending or attacking. But I feel like in the push maps, when you leave spawn, there's at least two like main routes. Like you go on this big avenue here or this big avenue here, or cut through the building.
But there's verticality too, right? And that's actually one of the, again, I didn't want to labor this because we haven't seen what the beta looks like on console, but you know, the big difference you find between console versus PC play is always, so the first thing you notice is the use of verticality, how people approach things. It's just, it's hard to do it on a console. With the maps adding so much verticality, I'm really curious to see how it lands for console players. It makes it quite difficult. So it'll actually it's going to raise that max skill cap a ton.
Yes, I 100%.
Yeah.
What do you think the metas are going to be like then, Matt? I mean, I feel
that was going to be kind of I didn't have this actually on our bullet points for today, but I was like, as we're kind of talking about it, as we shift into like league talk, that was going to be kind of a thing. Like, who do we think, based on, again, what you've seen, what you've played, what feels like it's going to be really powerful? So for me, in the tank position, there's a lot of viable candidates. It's going to be, you know what I mean? Like I did not have a good time with Winston, but I heard it numerous times from other like really good high level tank players. Orisa obviously is much more aggressive, and I think has super high sustain between fortify, between her spear blocking damage, which also increases her speed. Her ultimate also gives her fortify and gives her extra armor and everything like that.
Yeah.
So like she's got a ton of sustain in addition to being able to dish out damage with her spear and her gun and all that stuff. So she's very viable in my opinion. I feel like the ones people thought were going to be like crazy, like people I thought were like, oh, a buffed up diva is going to like just take over, and like playing her, like she's good. She can be usable, especially if that's your main. But I think Doomfist is going to be more viable than people give him credit for. I think that tank probably has the most viable options. I don't think Sigma's going to get a ton of play.
Wow.
That's my guess. But I'm thinking you're going to see a lot of Orisa. I think you're going to see a bit of Doom. I think you're going to see Winston. And I think Reinhardt has stayed even. I don't think he's gone up or gone down much. I think he'll be used about the same amount of time on the right maps, on the right escort maps and stuff like that. I think he'll be useful.
So what do you have for DPS then?
DPS, honestly, I mean, maybe it's because I'm a low skill player and like he's very easy to learn.
I'm in that category as well.
Yeah, but Soldier has felt very powerful. His speed, again, if we're talking about a game that's so much faster, his speed to get back to a fight, get back to a point, his ability to poke around corners like a standard FPS, and he still does a good amount of damage. The Helix rockets do a good amount of damage. I think he will, whereas in the last year or two, he's been kind of seen as not a joke pick, but kind of like, okay, I'm going to try something here kind of pick. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a standard pick. Like that's a pretty solid go-to, I think. I don't think Sojourn is going to get a ton of league play.
She's a bit squishy right now.
She's a bit
really
squishy.
Yeah.
I think her primary fire is a little weak, and there may be some like super high skilled hit scans who can. That's the thing. Her charge shot and her ultimate are going to require a ton of mechanical skill. So,
it's a very demanding hero for what I've seen.
Yeah, and it's not only it's not like Widow where it's like you stand back and you kind of line up flick, pick. It's she's sliding, jumping, shooting. Like, so you got to be able to hit those
Well,
railgun
it's weird
shots
too
on
because
a
she's a
dime.
projectile too, right? Not a hit scan in her primary fire, so you've got to like it takes like time to kill.
Yeah.
So
So
all right, so it supports, Matt. What do you have for the
Support.
supports?
I mean, Lucio. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be double flex support meta going in. Like, because we don't know what the game's like.
Yeah.
So we get
Yeah.
I think a lot of teams were picking up flex supports, flex. But then, man, from everything I've seen, from even I don't play a ton of support, but from what I've played, Lucio is very the speed. The speed, the ability to get your team to those points, get back into those fights, boost people out. I think Lucio will be huge. I think Mercy is still very, very viable. Brig, and you're the big Brig player. I'll acquiesce to you on this. Losing her stun, I think still feels viable, but not nearly as meta.
Yeah. If as long as the team's good, she can pump out a ton of heals because she pumps out equivalent to a Lucio. You can boop the same way. And the bash is just weird. You only use it to reposition. You use it to get away. You can also ride corners. There's a mechanic weirdness where you can like cut the corner, like a rally driver. You can cut the corner, so you start the bash behind the corner. You can finish it around.
Oh, yeah, I think I know what you mean. Actually,
yeah. There's some weird things going on with it, but
yeah.
Because for me, I'm like it's gonna be Winston. I think it's gonna be Winston, Genji, Soldier, Lucio, Ana. Probably Tracer thrown in.
That Genji has felt very, very viable. Like, again, another guy who was kind of a meme pick in the past. Only specialty players would use him. And stuff
no.
that.
The fact that the 3 shots to the head will just take you out. I'm like, it's a headshot. I'm like, that's like a Widow headshot if all 3 land. And I'm like, okay, but they go in a straight line. It's a weird damage multiply, like a vector that they've created, right? So yeah, I think Winston will be the main tank. That will be the tank that we'll see the most. I think we'll see some Marissas, of course, too. And look, we'll see a mix, but I think we're going to see a lot of Winston because Winston's bubbles stop all the area heals when you're a Lucio. So it's just repositioning, and it's really, really chunky. And he can shoot at distance now. And he can get in and out because the number one thing now is mobility and time back to fight. Because,
100%.
So because it's a numbers game, even though, it's like people be like, well, there's one fewer. I'm like, yeah, but to win a fight, you got to kill one less person. So it's actually, if you can get back faster, especially as a tank, it's huge. Sigma's really slow. You just right. Genji, Soldier, I think will be the 2 big ones. Maybe Tracer because again, time to fight it. But the other reason is that, and I'm sure you've noticed this, when you get into that tight brawl, when it's just that mad minute, you get turned around a lot more in the game. When you're playing, right? You don't you can't hold an angle like an attack vector. You kind of get spun around. So you need heroes that can spin you around, and Genji and Tracer can spin you around.
Yes.
And
that's
a tank,
sort of reaction time sort of thing.
And you can bait people with that, which is why you back them up with a Soldier who's just his speed boost on top of the fact that DPS faster means he shows up basically instantly. He gets back faster than anybody. He's like Lucio, right? But he also has a heal, and he can lay down continuous damage. So when you take that and you have basically you're going to have a primary damage dealer and you're going to have a mobile damage dealer. That's how it's going to get played out because you need to twist people. And once you get into circular, right? We're not playing chess anymore. That's an attrition game. It's low brow. You want a real game, you play Go. Go is about maximizing territory with the fewest amount of moves. That's the entire principle of Go. It's why Go is so much more advanced.
Are you a Go player?
I can't be. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. But it's a concept of encirclement versus attrition war. And the thing is, what people I was telling someone about this. I'm like, Overwatch is a lot more like Go. You've got to be efficient with what you do because once you're encircled, you wipe the other team out. That's how you take your points. So that's the difference. Like a lot of the old styles are built on it was like Westmoreland's strategy in Vietnam. Like he's like, we're just going to use artillery and go in lines. Like you can't fight like that anymore. I think you'll see like break picks when needed. But who knows? Like her bash keeps the inspire going up and Moira is annoying. Although I don't know if this is a difference, but did her damage orb ever? Is that supposed to refill your heal? Because I don't think it does right now.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Okay, so maybe that. Yeah, I just noticed it's a lot harder, but again, it's a lock on. So yeah, I think that's what we'll end up with. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of a rush style meta in the first sort of weeks.
yeah, oh yeah,
Because
totally.
there's like say we got a lot of tempo, so teams want to get back to the fight. But when
Mhm.
they want to get back to the fight, they need to hit as hard as possible.
Yeah.
So you'll see almost like these battering ram style comps, I think.
Yeah.
So you'll see the Lucio. Ana, for me, is probably going to be one of the highest flex support picks because of one factor,
Yep.
Sleep Dart.
Sleep Dart is going to be
Which is-
huge.
I
Yeah.
would say that's the only,
Oh, yeah.
as far as I can tell, I could be wrong here, because obviously I've only been an observer. Sleep Dart is the only hard CC in the game. Overwatch
Kind of. Although I think the biggest thing that I've seen a lot is you start the engagement with the nade. You don't use that in the fight. You engage with that because it eliminates the tank.
Yeah.
So the one problem with the
softens them
game,
up.
right, is that with no shields, like Orissa's a nade target. She's easy to hit. Like, yeah, she's
Oh,
got
yeah.
her like twirly pizza thing when she's in a bad mood and all that stuff.
Really
But
pizza thing.
well, like she says, like it's amore when you know.
Oh
she
yeah,
does
it
her
is.
ult.
I never
Oh,
thought about
God.
it that way.
I'm
though.
like,
It's
what
spinning a
kind of
pizza over your head.
Saluji's like
Yeah.
Lombardi's attack is this? Also, why is it that every hero and every voice line is like snarky and angry? It's like they're like going through like puberty now, where they're like everyone's
that's
angry
just-
now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah.
angry now. Everyone's like snarky, like edgelord, and I'm
Yeah.
like, and I was joking. The heroes in the game also experienced Overwatch for 3 years, and that's why they're
yeah,
like this.
they're all angsty.
They,
Yeah.
they're alive. They're like rope programs in Tron. They have been experiencing this
Yeah.
with us, and they're
Yeah.
tired of it. It's why Orisa doesn't want to learn about the iris. She just wants you to know that you're going to pay for what you've done.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's actually weird though. That's the other thing too. But I credit that to I attribute
Yeah.
that to the fact that Michael Chu's not there anymore, so the writer's gone. So you just have people like making things up as they go along. But
It's just like, yeah, this will
say-
be funny. This will be weird.
but they're
Yeah.
they're all like kind of rude now. It's weird.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's for me. Support, like I said, it's Ana. In damage, I say Soldier is going
Yeah.
to be a near enough pick. But to expand on what you said earlier about Soldier, in 2018, Soldier was considered a Genji soft counter. Because the idea would be, let's say Genji's going for a Dragon Blade. Back then, he couldn't cancel deflect. Soldier popped tack visor, and Genji's coming in. Genji had to deflect, which burned time off the Dragon Blade clock.
Mm.
So let's say the meta becomes Genji Soldier, you would, in theory, hold the tactical visor for the Dragon Blade and go, okay, hey, now get me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So-
Which based on what we've been talking about, a Genji
Yeah.
soldier
But
combo
Genji's
is not
blade
out of
is
the,
slower though. That's the other thing too, right? Like he moves slower. So like I was like, one thing I noticed was like I was just messing around with this. Like this was an awesome Mercy player, so we're just doing Mercy Brig, and I think we crushed 5 of his ults in a row. Like he couldn't take out 2 supports because he's slow enough that your whip shots can hit him, and
Yeah.
he bounces back. You notice that the momentum's different now when the game lands on a boop with a whip shot. It pauses for a second and then it throws people back. It goes like ka-jung, you know. So it's weird. And then the bash. This is where the non-stunning is not necessarily a problem because you just keep fighting through. But you do notice these things, you know.
Yeah.
So like, but Genji's like everything was like he's got to poke, and then Dragon Blade. Now his main attack is way worse to deal
Yeah.
with.
yes.
Well, listen, again, and obviously Genji players with the Dragon Blade, you need the dash resets to keep going.
Yes.
So it's also a case of tactical visor forces you into deflect. So that's, let's say, 3 seconds off the Dragon Blade clock, just for argument's sake.
Mhm.
Then you go, okay, I've got like 5 seconds left of ult. What can I do? Everybody by that point has spread out. And keep in mind that this is going to be 5-on-5 as well.
Yep.
So there's going to be one less target for you to get your reset on. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And so
It
it's gonna be-
100% will be. And so, well, on that note, we do have. We're here to talk about the league. Let's talk a little bit about the league.
So
So
we got our rankings.
I have your rankings. You guys have hopefully have not
who's
seen
got the
each other's.
spiciest?
Yeah.
Mine's
you'll-
definitely-
Yeah, you'll see.
You haven't seen mine.
So I'm going to start with. So we don't have time. This is obviously our first episode. We might have done like team by team breakdowns or whatever, but we're at least going to kind of go over our general thoughts of the power rankings from each region, talk about a little bit of, who's at the top, who's at the bottom, and why, and stuff like that. So I asked the other guys to do their power rankings and to not share them with each other. And then we'll all just kind of share them here together.
Oh, do we have to defend them? Shit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Don't worry, Richard. We're coming right to
mine.
you. We are coming right to Richard. We're going to start with NA. And here we go. We have everybody side by side. And you'll notice there, between me and Plex, it's a pretty similar top, and then there's Richard, who I have to imagine, knowing you as I do, this was led a little bit, at least at the top of the pile here, was led a little bit more by emotion than maybe logic. Am I off base there?
No.
But tell me.
Okay, so Toronto, obviously, because like we're the best city generally around the area, and like we're not Vancouver. No, but yeah, okay, look, realistically, I always put Toronto and New York at the top, just because
those are your towns.
I've lived in both towns. I've known the communities, and actually those that I put there because I would argue have the strongest like community support systems, although New York actually has the strongest one, hands down. Just it's a better town for that in general. I do think Toronto could be interesting. To be honest, it's that once I saw how the game was going, I was like, honestly, I wasn't sure what could happen there. I think Excelsior, again, we'll see. I always joke, never forget an Overwatch League Season 1. Yes, Jason. Oh, hey, Jason, how are you? Yes, it's definitely a Venoms and Alpha Flight bias.
Sure.
But the main reason was, I said, when it comes down to assessing a roster, especially with like a new style of play or like a new structure, whatever, never forget the first season of Overwatch League. The first season. Do you remember what NYXL was ranked as? People were like, they're going to be mid. It's LW Blue. I watched a lot of Apex, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm like, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be fine. They're like, who's this guy, Jajonak? Never heard of this guy. He's just coming off the ladder. And I'm like, no, buddy. Like, I don't know who he is either, right? But the whole point was everyone ripped them off as, like, losers, right? And then everyone's like, yeah, Soul Dynasty is going to kill everybody, and everyone's like, Dallas is going to be the best team ever. And I'm like, we know how that went. No, but all that said, though, I will say, though, a lot of my rankings here basically are based off of consistency of roster and just and pure mechanical skill of what I could recognize. So, like, honestly, Dallas looks like a beast roster. Justice looks pretty strong. Shock can fight. Basically, who are the teams that can fight their way out? Because we've removed the margin. It's not everyone's got the mechanical skill. It's the margin for error has gone down. So that's actually how I did most of this. So that's why Glads are where they are. Like, they make great plays. I know they can do well. Houston, same thing. Basically, what it really came down to was I didn't know how to choose basically everything after Atlanta. I was like, I'm gonna they're all kind of like good.
Sure.
The ones I put at the bottom were Mayhem, Spitfire, and Titans. Because Titans doesn't have them. I don't think they're gonna have what it takes to like go brute force and just beat people head to head. Plus, it's like Vancouver. It's like, why would anyone ever support such an overpriced, awful city? Look,
Toronto's pretty expensive too.
Yeah, but we're not Vancouver. Like Vancouver, no one lives in Vancouver. You're like living in like Richmond or Surrey or something like that. And it's like, and you go to Richmond and like kids go to school in Ferraris, and it's like Vancouver's just like a weird town, and I don't like their hockey team either. And they couldn't even hold on to the Grizzlies, so whatever. Spitfire, I think is,
breadsticks.
Yeah, but like from like Pizza Hut. Yeah, I mean,
you talk poorly about Pizza Hut breadsticks, and I.
But the thing is, here's the thing: if you're even a Canadian, you don't go to Pizza Hut. You go to Pizza if you want a national pizza chain. They couldn't even get their pizza sponsor right. And here's the thing: on top of it all, I always kind of like. Again, this is just part of the way I approach this too. I'm like, I always think about how organizations are run and how teams will handle under pressure. And like, remember Runaway? Remember what happened with that team? Remember how they handled that? That's why I don't have any confidence in Vancouver, because it's less about the players. I think they actually have some great players. They got Aspire. Former Revival guy. I will always support Aspire like forever. But I do think that like that's where I saw challenges. Spitfire just feels like it's in between. Mayhem feels a little bit in between. And Boston's Boston. I'll never support Boston or anything from there, anybody from there, anything they do, because Boston.
Is this a New York thing?
Yeah. Okay. Well, although we have
a Red Sox thing.
all I'm
So-
saying, anyway, I won't go into steroid era baseball and how we celebrate some players, but no.
Sure,
But realistically, I just don't see the. It comes down to like who can fight, like who can really get into a dust up. But I will say Dallas looks freaky good,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
you know, that's what I'll leave with. They look freaky good.
Sure. And the one thing I will say, like, is Mimi, as I made it out, you're putting Toronto up top, and I understand why. But that said, I mean, I think you're loony bins, but I will say this: I do think that that's what they're like dead center for me. I think they're one of those ones that have a ton of punch up potential. And I'm totally like, it's on paper, I'm unsure, but I think with some of their pickups, I think they could really like that. In my list, they could punch up, they could be in the top 4.
Yeah,
I
well,
think they could.
just remember, when it was Goats meta, Toronto came in. We had no business. Everyone's like, we made it to like the playoffs, and everyone's like, oh, we lost. We got wiped out by Atlanta, whatever. I'm like, we weren't even supposed to be there. Nobody placed Toronto there. And that entire team came down to one guy. And then no one gives him enough credit. But Stellar, when he was on Brig, got me more fantasy points than anyone else because nobody knew who the guy was. And that's the whole thing, right? It's that because of the way the game's played, we're going to find that certain players have a knack for new aspects of the mechanic. We are going to be surprised the same way when we land the Goats. And that's why I'll always have confidence in what Toronto does, partially because I'm in the city, but also because there are elements where I think when you find brand new players, brand new folks, new faces, like I want to see how Chorong does. I have no idea. I've never seen his tape.
Chorong, that's one of the highlights for me. I mean,
right?
I haven't seen a ton, but I've seen a bit of his play. Like when I saw the pickups and everything, and I heard some people talking about him. I went back. I watched a couple of VODs or whatever. And like I think he's one of those star pickups.
Exactly.
That could really again help them punch.
And
up.
like Hotba could be pretty cool in
I was
this
gonna say,
style of game, and that's what I'm saying.
Is
so
solid. Yep, absolutely.
But like I said, I would say like all kind of like fan sort of allegiances aside, Dallas, Washington, Atlanta, or they're all looking good. But Dallas, man, and I hate saying that because I know the Dallas guys. And they've got like, I'm buddies with the supporters club there. They're good. They're good folks. But man, if I think they are onto something.
Yeah, 110%.
Dallas folks, if you're listening, give Richard grief when you see him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
or you can give it to me. I'll see you guys this weekend. You can give it to me. I'll pass it along.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, but otherwise, I think we can all agree, like you said, that the Dallas looks scary. I mean, that they're going to. I feel like they kind of are holding steady from their very successful team last year for the most part. Couple little things here that they changed, but I mean, fearless. If you're especially if Winston is going to be as good as Richard thinks him, fearless is the guy you want.
I know. I think that's why I put them there. I think they lucked out, man. And that was
add to the point here.
And fucking see, there's the first episode. Hanbin. Who was the best off tank in the world. Yeah. And so if you between those two, the versatility on the tank roll,
it also allows them to rest, which I think is a really cool thing. Yeah. Right. Like that's the other thing I saw there. I'm like, wait, you have two people who can like take a break. That's really cool. You know?
Yeah. So you're not weighing one person down. Yeah. Especially with the important role that tanks were playing and will continue to play even with the one. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure on that line, on that front line to like. It's on you to get this engagement going and to get us in there and to like make stuff start to happen. So yeah, to be able to switch in and out. That's why I'm very curious about a lot of these teams that have one tank. Some of it through necessity, their budgets, but others by choice. It'll be very interesting to see how those players' endurance can hold out.
Well, for me, the one thing I like about Dallas Fuel isn't necessarily the players; it's the coaching. Because last year,
Rush is
no hit scan player.
Yep.
And Dallas Fuel basically dictated every single meta.
Yep.
It's like the Rush meta. Everyone was running in Casty May. He goes, we don't have a hit scan. Let's run Symmetra instead. And then everybody started playing Symmetra. Then later on, we had the zombie comp. Winston, Diva, Reaper, Echo, Moira, Lucio. That was a Dallas Fuel comp as well. And they basically ran
good point.
That comp.
They have an ability. They have an ability to like shape the meta if they want.
Exactly.
And good organizational thinking and planning. No, that's fair.
Florida Mayhem in a way, did that last year with their double
Yes.
shield composition, where you
Yeah.
had BQB on the Ashe and then you had Yaki on Tracer. But a team that could dictate the meta will have the advantage.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, teams that can do set plays will have the advantage.
Yes.
And that's why I like Rush as a
Mm.
coach. I mean, take my mayhem bias out of the equation for
Mhm.
a bit, and I
Mhm.
think I've always appreciated like good coaching, and I think Rush is probably the best coach coming to this season.
Yeah.
Based on what I've seen this
That's
year.
fair.
That's not a. I don't think that's too spicy of a take. I think a lot of people would agree with that. And
I'd easily rate Rush over Krusty on SF Shock. Guarantee you.
Yeah.
what about someone like Moon?
Coach, I like
Mm.
Moon because again, it all comes down to how I like to see coaching. I like to see coaches that go, okay, I've got these players. What can I do with them? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than the other way around of, okay, we're the players. How do you want us to play, coach?
Yeah.
So I've seen like in
I love
traditional
that.
sports
Yeah.
where
That's a good point.
a coach will go into a new team, let's say the Premier League, English Premier League. A coach will go in, look at the squad he's got, and try and get them to play the coach's way. And you could easily tell when it doesn't work.
Like Everton.
Well, not just Everton. I mean, trying to think of other examples off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
no, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah,
that
there's
happens
a
all
lot of
the
historical
time.
references.
Yeah.
It's like history
Mhm.
has shown that unless you have the right players, you can't play the style you want to
Yep.
play. I mean, we've seen that with Manchester City with Pep Guardiola. He has to have his team playing a specific style of football,
Mm-hmm.
so he has to have the right players in. And that's. But when you look at teams like Dallas Fuel with Rush, and obviously Coach Moon on Shanghai Dragons, they went, okay, we have these players. How can I get the best out of them? And he did it. Both teams have done that by working what they've got, kind of thing, rather than in sort of. I'm trying to think of the best way to put this, which is not my strong suit.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's just it's the best coaches, and I think this goes across all sports.
Oh yeah.
Can look at a room of anybody, and it's less about like I don't want like there's some people who like I don't want this, give me money, and I want to go that guy and that guy and that because like they need it. But I'm like a really good puppet master, a good coach, whatever.
Well, it's why the Lakers wanted Nick Nurse.
Yeah, man, it's
and they're not getting them.
Brother,
I mean,
it's an artist. You put anything in front of them, and a good artist can make out of a dog shit. Pardon my French. Can make a masterpiece. You know what I mean? Can put things where they need to be a beautiful piece. And I think a coach could do that too. With enough work and potential.
Plex, I think you bring up a really great point though, and it's something that I've always thought it's one of those things that's always been a pain point in esport for me, and it's that you don't have a lot of cultures of like building and strat. Like everything's sort of like I said, it's like an automotive technician. You just like diagnose and throw it out and replace, and then when that doesn't work, you delete, replace, and bring up someone else. That's why we have like 15-day contracts and 30-day contracts. But what you're describing is something that's like the seed of a far better and more sustainable and quite frankly a more enjoyable approach to how we even watch like how the game operates. And like now it's like now I'm almost thinking, oh, man, I really want Dallas to pull this off, even though it's not my squad, because if you can show it that there can be a systems are needed to build longevity and like great league.
Give you an example of what I mean. Over the last couple of seasons, I've seen teams figure out how to play against the San Francisco Shock, which is why I don't have them as highly as some of you. And that's because no matter what players are on that roster, they're always playing the crusty stuff Overwatch, which is hit hard, hit fast, build ultimates as quickly as possible, and then dump them in a team fight. It's like the number of times I've watched a team fight and I see San Francisco Shock got, let's say, 4 ults. I can guarantee they'll use those 4 ults during the team fight because they use them to create the overload.
Yeah,
it's like
totally fair.
But what teams have figured out, we saw Houston Outlaws last year, for example. They figured out how to either survive the overload or prevent the overload from happening. It's like dictate the tempo to prevent them from getting the ultimates online. Or, oh no, they've got ultimates online. Let's just manage our cooldowns, our own ultimates, survive as long as we can, and then hit them on the counter attack.
Yeah,
And I think Shock are still going to struggle this season because unless they find what I would call a plan B style of play,
Mm.
they're going to struggle. I mean, there's no doubt Cross is a good coach. I mean, 2-time champion, come on.
right.
But it's a case of for me, he hasn't shown he can coach a plan B. Where a lot of teams, like you said, LA Gladiators.
Fair point, man. I get it, man.
It's like LA Gladiators, for all their set plays and stuff like that, they can come up with all these tailored strats on the fly.
Yeah.
And then Paris Eternal is a great example of last year. The number of times they swapped back to spawn and went, okay, we're against this. Let's switch things up.
Yes.
And I can't remember who it was against, but there was a map 5 in the pool where they ran back to spawn and switched to a wrecking ball comp. And it worked. And it won the map.
Yeah.
So the real takeaway here is Plex's power rankings really are the most authoritative and the only one we should really be paying attention
pretty
to.
much. Pretty much.
So now
I'm trying to be impartial, but
so Plex, I got to ask you then, because I'm super curious, because I had no idea what to do for the Asia rankings. I'd love to see what Plex has for the.
You want to move on? You want to move on to APAC?
Let's go for it.
Plex, lead us off, man. Because
before we move on, though, I do want to say that because for those who are listening home who haven't seen the visual, both Plex and I have Dallas at top. Dallas, Atlanta, and Glads are pretty much all at the top. You can change those in and out. One of the other big, and I think we have a lot of our middle teams are similar, kind of Shock, Outlaws, Mayhem, middle with some punch up potential, and then the bottom teams like London, Vancouver, Boston, pretty much across the board for all of us. I wish we had like 4 hours because there's so much I want to cover, and we'll get into it as the season goes on because there's so much I want to talk about. With Florida has such an interesting roster, and Gunba at the helm. Talk about coaching has a lot of potential to do some really interesting things there.
Yeah,
I think Houston has made a nice little upgrade, but again, they're one of those situations. One tank can Piggy really handle everything? We're gonna find out, especially this weekend. One thing I do before we go though. The one big difference, though, you have Toronto pretty low, Plex.
Yep, Plex.
And I, not to piss off Richard here, but I'm getting what moved them down to third to last for you?
See, the problem
that didn't impress you. Yeah.
The problem I've got. So, first of all, as much as I want to say it's a dig at Richard, it is not. This is legit. My opinion. So, so obviously we had Spitfire Titans down the bottom.
Yeah, we all had that, actually. I noticed that. All of us had that.
It's pretty universally from what I've read and everything.
It's like differentiation between where. But for me to find, it's a case of the problem I've got with them is historically, when they've taken on these veteran players, they've not really performed as well for their roster. It's like they'll bring in all these big names, but then they just sort of dip when they join the roster. And I just don't really have much faith in them. And you look at Justice, they've got Decay, who, for all his negative points, he could turn a game on its head.
Yeah.
And then you look at, in NYXL, slight bias because of Coach Kooky, Yaki Gundam, but because I know what they can do, I could sort of make a more informed decision.
Yeah.
With Toronto, like I said, it's literally a case of I've seen players go to that org and they could be really good players, but they just seem to dip.
Sure. Well,
but I'm willing to be impressed, though.
One thing about Toronto is they've had a tremendous amount of churn at that organization. So coaching staff or team managers, none of those people are there anymore. So maybe some of that culture is gone too.
Could be.
I know exactly what you mean, though, Plex. That's very fair. It's sort of the plug and play doesn't work there. It never has.
No.
The parachuting of players has been a problem in the city here.
But the one thing I will say, and I think this goes for NA and APAC, and talking about even those low ranked teams that we have, your Londons, your Vancouvers, and everything. And something I've heard kind of from anybody talking about the league preseason, and which is the wild thing, is I feel like everybody, with maybe one or two exceptions, pretty much everybody has leveled up. I think in terms of talent, in terms of what they have, but it's just it's like London, for example. I think they do have a level up there, even with some of the recent drama they had with Provide and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think the round is a little bit better than last year, but I don't think it's enough of a level up because everybody else has leveled up as well. You know what I mean? Same thing.
Yeah.
Aspire going to Vancouver, I think, is a huge get for them. I think that's a huge talent for them, but it's not enough to compete with the other teams that have brought in some incredible talent too.
Yeah, especially with the number of rookies coming in this year as well.
Yes.
Sort of like a lot of unknowns this season in that regard.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
tons of rookies coming out of contenders and stuff like that.
Which is why I rate, sort of taking my bias again out of the equation, why I rated Mayhem a bit higher, because Gunbar was the coach on the 2020 Valiant. Predominantly rookies, and they played great Overwatch and got to, I think it was like 5th in their in their season.
Gunba's your Moneyball guy.
Yeah.
He's your Moneyball guy. He's who can look around and be like, hey, these may not be like the marquee, like who's everybody ever, but it's like, I can make this work. Like I can make these guys, I can make this thing work. So and again, not to belabor, we'll get into Mayhem stuff especially as the weeks and stuff go on, because that team, to me, Mayhem are the most interesting team to watch. I think they are a dark horse. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But let's get to the Apac ratings. Yeah. Here we go.
Hey, we all agreed on the bottom.
Yes,
and the top.
Yeah, and the top. It's pretty close overall. Apac with 7 teams, it's a little bit, I think, easier to be close. And I think it's also similar kind of thing. Like, it's hard to fight the teams that are at the top. It's hard. Everybody's kind of leveled up, but to a similar degree. So not a ton to me has changed in Apac from last year, quite frankly. The biggest thing, as for those listening at home, we all have Shanghai at number 1 and Seoul at number 2. A little bit of difference at 3, 4, 5, but we all have Guangzhou and LA Valiant at the bottom. So pretty similar rundowns from top to bottom. The biggest thing for me, I mean, Shanghai is scary as all hell still. I think they can continue to run. I think Seoul has a potentially the best. Maybe this is a hot take or maybe this is bold, but I think their DPS trio is potentially overall best in Apac, maybe worldwide.
For me,
between Fitz, Prophet, and Stalker. So I think they're very, very scary. You go ahead, Plex. Send me some thoughts on those.
So for me, I think the shrewdest signing for them was actually not who you'd expect. It's Smurf.
Oh God, yeah. Smurf,
this is my
real tank. Yes.
The Apac meta has historically never really run Reinhardt. What is Smurf's weakest main tank? Reinhardt. So if they can keep him on Winston, Orisa, and Bull, for example, they've got themselves a pretty solid pickup. And a lot of people go about Jonak not being on their roster.
Right.
Creative, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated flex supports from last year.
Yeah.
He's what we call a safe player. He doesn't go for the flashy stuff or anything like that.
Yep.
He just sort of gets the job done. I mean, the best way I can put it is Manchester United had Paul Scholes and Michael Carrick in the midfield engine room, so to speak. They wouldn't be flashy. They wouldn't do anything.
They got the job done.
Yeah, they just sort of you give him the ball, it would go to the right player, things like that. Creative is that player. He will literally go, okay, you need a bit of topping up. Here you go. Oh, you need a sleep dart there. Boom. He's just sort of the silent sort of platform for the rest of the team to succeed. Kind of like Fate was for Mayhem, where BKB and Yaki would get all the plaudits, but it's because Fate was that anchor point they could build around.
That's a good, really interesting point, though, Plex. The notion of getting the job done. The game is so unforgiving right now. 5v5, like, I mean, I'm sure if you, Matt, you had this in beta. Like, if one person's just kind of like moping around, it gets really weird, really fast.
Oh yeah.
But stability, consistent placement. Just like because the margins are smaller and the maps are wider. The margin of error is smaller, maps are wider. That's a really interesting observation. You just had, Plex, because a lot of that I feel like is going to define so much. I'm really curious now about the styles that can emerge between, like, because you can go all out and do some really weird stuff But then there's going to be people who stick to like close, tight systems. And I could imagine, because you've only got 5 to put out in the deck, that variance could lead to some really interesting things. I never thought about it that way, but you're right about the Reinhardt observations. Friggin' incredible. Yeah, that's super deep. You know?
There's a
and
reason
I don't
why.
think, and I don't think Smurf. Yeah, and I don't think Smurf gets a lot of credit because
he's
he was
3
on
apples high.
He was on San Francisco, and is that a Smurf joke? Like the
Smurfs are 3 apples tall.
Oh, God. Right over. I never watched Smurfs. I never watched Smurfs as a kid.
Seriously?
I'm very much aware of the franchise, but I've never seen.
Did you watch Captain Planet?
Oh yeah,
I knew it.
Oh, Captain Planet.
Sorry,
he's a hero. Gonna bring pollution down to 0.
You see, Plex, this is the difference. Yeah, Smurf.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, continue, please go on.
Smurf, no. Smurf, I think, within his time on San Francisco, did not get enough credit.
No,
because I mean, he was playing opposite Super. You know what I mean? And it's hard to live in that shadow and stuff, if you will. But he's such a good tank player. I think he'll be a huge anchor for Seoul.
Say, realistically, with the shock regards to Super and Smurf, it all came down to the 3rd pick in their hero pool. They could both play Orisa, they could both play Ball. It's a case of one could play Reinhardt, the other played Winston.
Yep.
So that's where you see the rotation, where you could easily put Super in for an Orisa, but if you need to switch to Winston, you'd rather have Smurf in.
Yep, 100%.
So it's always going to be that 3rd play. I mean, we saw it with Chengdu last year, over the years with Gaga and Among, not because of the Wrecking Ball, but Among was low key actually a pretty consistent Reinhardt. And obviously, we all know his history of not being a good Winston player. So they had to bring someone in for that. But it's that sort of thing, which is why, like as you say, Smurf sometimes flies under the radar because obviously it's a case of how he plays is very different to Super.
Yes,
and
very
what
much.
he plays as well.
So I know Richard's got to get going, so we're gonna wrap this up pretty soon here. But the big question mark before we kind of leave APAC alone, the big question mark I think for me, and I think there's a lot of people who feel very similar to us as far as the overall rankings. The big question mark, especially as recent, was Chengdu. If you saw the big drama going on with Chengdu, they basically their parent company lost bajillion dollars in the last month, and so they originally had a huge roster. So they did they cut 4 people or 3?
I believe it was 4. I know that Evelto was one of them. I couldn't remember.
Evelto, Aprita. They got let go of Aprita. They kept everyone was on it. Leaves probably the most expensive player, being the MVP, but they managed to keep him. So they're at the minimum 6 players. I know that.
Yeah, they brought a new tank player.
And Leave is obviously Leave is a hard carry kind of MFer. He can do it, but with the lack of support around him and potentially now and the lack of the organization might be in a little bit of disarray. Otherwise I might have had them second.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
if they would have stayed together and would have but just all the people leaving the organization, who knows what else is going to happen. They might lose a coach, they might lose players throughout the season, stuff like that. So there's just a lot of chaos in that organization.
I mean, with Chengdu, it's one of those funny cases. Like a lot of, I was kind of laughing at folks kind of playing economist on that. I'm like, you guys, they've been dropping since Valentine's Day last year because China has a 3-hour cap on how much online gaming you can play when you're under 18. The stock went down because of that. It's not that they're doing anything worse. Hui is still one of the largest media networks basically that exist on the planet. And what's actually really funny is if you know anything about equities, they're actually considered a buy target right now because they're undervalued for the MAUs that they get. That's why I was laughing. People they're going out of business. And I'm like, that's not how any of this works. Guys. Anyway, but what's interesting, though, is it affected mergers. That's what really kind of screwed up a lot of things. There were a lot of mergers that were cut down in the tech space and in China as well, too. But that doesn't mean stability isn't viable for them. So you could see some changes come up. But yeah, Eveltal was oh, that's a bummer. They got Deitzel now, right? So I think that was the guy who came in to replace, right?
Yes.
Deitzel came in. We'll see. I would say, though, organizationally, I doubt that they're as quite frankly, I would when it comes to financial predicaments, I'm pretty confident that some of the North American teams are far more economically
Oh,
unstable
yeah, I'm sure.
than
I'm sure.
what we see there. I think we just like to, that was just shocking, I think, because
Yeah.
people were shocked. But it's a bummer though. I would have put them higher as well too.
Yeah, for sure. So there's two things before we wrap up. We're gonna get to one. We're gonna get to our match of the week because each week we're gonna pick a match. We're gonna give our best predictions,
Okay.
and the losers are gonna have to do something funny on next week's show.
Mhm.
That's what makes this show fun.
All right.
But also, so something I want, we'll do this for next week, but I want to put it out there in the public sphere so they all know what we're going to be doing. Because I was going to do it this week, but I didn't have enough time. So watch the games this weekend. Get yourself a rough idea of how everybody's doing.
Mhm.
And on next week's show, here's the bet part that I didn't tell you about. I found the way. You're going to pick your top 3 teams
Mhm.
globally, APAC and NA. You're going to
Okay.
you're going to pick your top 3. All right. I know this is a weird system. You take your top 3.
Mhm.
You have 10 points
Mhm.
to distribute between your top 3.
Right.
So you could put 5 on. If you think Dallas is number 1, you could put 5 on Dallas. You think 2 is Shanghai, you could put 3 on them, and then you could put the rest on your number 3, whatever it is. Or you could just put 10 on Dallas, because at the end of the year, whatever team is in first place will get 3 times whatever you put on it, like 3 times return on your bet or whatever it is. Second place will get double, and third place will just you get back whatever you put in. So if you put 2 points on the third place team, you get 2 points. If your team, like if one of your teams just didn't make the top 3, you get nothing. So, and we'll see who has the highest return at the end of the season.
We got to do this after one weekend.
Yep. It's
No
your
pressure.
biggest,
I
your biggest,
love it.
boldest, wildest, just like, I think they can do it. It's going to be totally wacky and
I
off
love
the wall
it.
by
I'm
the end
in.
of the year. Yeah. So watch Shanghai fall from grace. We all think they're going to be number 1. We put 9 points on them. We're all losers. So it'll be fun. But
For
before
who
we
though?
go, exactly. But before we go, we're going to do our match of the week. For me, I'm going to make Piggott, because I have the fortunate pleasure of working at the Battle for Texas here in America. Houston Outlaws versus the Dallas Fuel, taking place on land. First major land event for Overwatch League since before the pandemic, which is cool. So that'll be our match of the week this week. Dallas, Houston. Go ahead, Richard. Give us a score line, and then whoever is the most off is going to have to do something. It's either going to be something, you either have to sing something,
Okay.
or we're going to the classic internet gimmick. You're going to have to eat something spicy live on camera.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
What do you think the score line will be? Houston.
Well, Dallas has the 2-on-4. Right. They're a pretty cool crew, and they're going to raid because it's in Houston, right?
What's that?
The games are in Houston, correct?
No, the game is actually in San Antonio.
Oh, San Antonio.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's neutral ground.
Oh, neutral ground. Oh.
Neutral territory.
Ooh, but San Antonio had so they had the Lone-Star Vanguard when you were with
Are you
Houston,
trying to
and
base this on like the history
they
of
have
esports
a
in
San
the town?
Antonio, they've got a San Antonio crew, an Austin crew, and a Houston crew.
Okay.
But Dallas has 2-on-4. They're okay.
Should we just come back to you,
Dallas is
Richard?
a much better. Okay, you know what? I'm actually gonna 3-0 it for Dallas, to be honest.
3-0.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 3-0 it for
Okay.
Dallas.
I mean, again, we know how scary they look. Plex, what about you?
Yeah.
Houston, Dallas.
So let's say for all my thing about Rush, I'm gonna give Houston a chance. I'm gonna say 3-1. But with
Okay.
Dallas getting the win. Purely
Okay.
because we don't really know too much about what's going to happen in the game. But I believe in Coach
Making good
Rush,
decisions.
and
Yeah.
thank you. It's like I believe in Coach Rush, and I got no problem with like Houston getting something out of this game, because obviously you're up against a team that is known to be powerful, so getting anything will be a benefit for them. So I'm going to say 3-1.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, for me, I think I'm with you on this, Plex. I think to me, I think Houston has his punch up ability. I think Pelican is a huge upgrade to the DPS. I think Pelican Dante is a really great lineup. I think Merritt was a good pickup as well. Again, my biggest question is Piggy solo tank. And Piggy he was a kind of a Sigma specialist. And so like with Sigma not being really doesn't feel like it's going to be super meta at all. I'm curious to see how he's going to play some of the other tanks. So I agree. I think it's going to be a Dallas victory. But just to shake it up, we had a 3-0, a 3-1. I'll give Houston the benefit. I think this early in the game, maybe they get a surprise. I'm going to go 3-2, still Dallas, but I'm going to give Houston a little bit of that punch up potential.
So we've all gone differently.
So whatever the result ends up being, basically, if Houston wins, we all have to do something stupid, okay?
We're all screwed.
That's it. If Houston wins, we're all, no matter, it doesn't matter if it's 3-1, 3-2, whatever. If Houston wins, we're all doing something silly. But if Dallas wins, whichever scoreline is the correct one, that person wins. The other two have to do something silly. Yay! Okay. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's our first show. There was so much more. This is going to be fun. There was so much more we could have covered, and we will in the coming weeks. What are your predictions for the season? What are your predictions for this weekend coming up? There's so many matchups. Make sure you go do your pick'ems because they're going to be fun. We might even be doing, if and when we're able, some kind of watch-alongs, things like that. Co-streaming is allowed this season via YouTube. Excuse me. I think, you have to stream it on YouTube, though.
It has to be YouTube.
Yeah, because of that silly, stupid exclusive contract. But anyway, so some of those might happen. You never know. But let us know. You can let me know in the Discord for the Drama Club, !Discord in our Twitch chat if you're live with his, or check out any of the social media links that I have on my channels. But until the next time, thank you guys so much for being here. Richard, Plex, you guys want to say your goodbyes?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. Again, thanks for having me. Again, I actually didn't mind getting those late night sad looking pictures of you. It really made me want to come in. The oil dripping down your chest.
Hey, Faye, brother.
No, honestly, like I'm super excited. It's been tough to sort of fully stay engaged with the Overwatch scene for the last little while, and in a way, it's just the reality is it's best when you can get into LANs and get a real dust up. But I think the new style. And the new folks that are showing up, I think it's gonna be awesome, and I'm really looking forward to jamming with you folks to talk about this, especially when we get to co-stream, because I just want to hear what Plex has to say, because he actually knows what he's talking about.
You think that? But no, all joking aside, it is truly a pleasure to be on here. I mean, I've never done anything like this before. I mean, I've done my own personal content. I've never done podcast work before, so this is a big step for me. So to be doing it alongside, like I said on Twitter myself, of a guy who works for a drinks company, basically, and a guy who's a former NXT Tag Team Champion. This is just truly something I would not have expected, but it's been a fun ride, and I'm glad to be doing it, and long may it continue.
And it's just getting started. So until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves. We'll see you in the game.